week. That is breaking news in just the last couple of minutes, really, since the markets opened. The White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, has been out this morning trying to tamp down fears and to tamp down the market nervousness about the virus. And we're going to be keeping a close eye on that over the course of the show. As we say, we're trying to bring you Stephen K. Bannon from New York. As you know, he has been the one really focusing on this virus. We launched War Room Pandemic about a month and a half ago now to bring you the breaking news of the coronavirus and its implications because of the global supply chain, because of how interconnected the markets have become over the last couple of decades, much to the chagrin, obviously, of economic nationalists. We warned you, and now we're seeing the fruition of an irresponsible set of policies, frankly, that has led us to be over-reliant on other nations which aren't really our allies and can't really deal, like the United States and the Western world can deal, with outbreaks such as this. You have to have the sense right now that while there is obviously significant consternation in the financial markets, you also have to have the sense of just how importantly the White House is taking this. Obviously, Vice President Pence being named by President Trump as the lead on this pandemic just a couple of days ago. That means that's a significant shift upwards from Alex Azar, the health secretary, doing this up until earlier this week. That means the White House is taking this obviously more seriously. We have been talking about the $2.5 billion that they intend to plow into this, and the $8.5 billion that Democrats want to grandstand upon, trying to politicize this global pandemic. But it is of serious proportions as we've watched the numbers tick up outside of China. The numbers tick up in terms of those infected. I want all of you guys to chime in on this and join in on the War Room 2020 hashtag. I want to get into some of your tweets in just a moment as we await Stephen K. Bannon and Jason Miller here this morning. I'm in the hot seat in the meantime. Hashtag War Room 2020 on Twitter. Let me know what you're thinking about that, and we'll also cover more in terms of the polling that's coming out at the moment. I saw some very interesting polling that is coming out in terms of Elizabeth Warren and her extraordinary decline in some of the polls, including in her home state of Massachusetts, dropping 15 points in the latest poll. We'll talk about what that means as well. But Michael Bloomberg, and I want to talk about Michael Bloomberg for a second. Michael Bloomberg picking up 13 points in that poll. But Bloomberg, I was listening to the radio this morning. I listen to the news alerts every morning as I get it on my radio, and they go through all these people speaking, and you hear Joe Biden. You know what Joe Biden sounds like, and you hear Bernie Sanders in unmistakable voice, and you hear Elizabeth Warren, and you know what she sounds like, and Pete Buttigieg, even Amy Klobuchar. But then this other little mousy voice came through. And I'm not kidding. I'm not just trying to be a hater. For a second, I had no idea who was speaking. It was Mayor Michael Bloomberg. And it occurred to me that he has a fairly unrecognizable voice and a fairly minuscule timbre to that voice as well. No real impact. And I'm surprised, in a sense, that he's managing to take home so many points from Elizabeth Warren, especially after Fight Night Round 1. Where she slapped him in the face with those non-disclosure agreements, but that's the latest. That's the latest in terms of the polling that's coming out that we're looking at this morning. We're also looking at a story that I didn't necessarily know that we wanted to talk about, but Bloomberg has it up, ironically, this morning, and that's about a dinner that we hosted here in Washington D.C. a couple of days ago. We, as regular listeners of the show will know, we bring the world leaders of the populist nationalist movement together, and we had something like that about 3 weeks ago here in the historic Breitbart Embassy on Capitol Hill, and we also had one of these this week as populist nationalist leaders arrived in the United States, in Washington, D.C., for meetings. We congregated a great many of them, including the Brazilian president's son, Eduardo Bolsonaro, Nigel Farage, members of the European Parliament, Nicola Bay, Jerome Riviere, and members of Congress here in the United States too. And Bloomberg has the story. I was obviously in the room, and it was great to not just meet with a lot of those people, a lot of the people I've known for a great many years, and catch up with them, but to hear the stories of what was important to them in their electoral victories in their nations, and what's been their focus in terms of what they're doing right now, what they're doing in the future, and how they intend to continue on the economic populist nationalist thing. The story's up on Bloomberg. We're going to put it up on warroom.org so everybody can look at it and see what went on. We have some exclusive pictures that I'll be sharing on my social media and War Room 2020 Twitter feed over the next day or so as we go through the pictures and really pick out the ones that make me look the best. So we'll be posting those in the next day or so watch out for that. And something really stuck with me. That Laura Ingraham said at that dinner. She joined us for the first part before doing her television show, her Fox News show. And Laura said, in 20 or 30 years' time, we'll be looking back at the last couple of years, record low unemployment, lower taxes, a better business environment, the ascendancy of the nation state and the idea of sovereignty coming back. And she said, we often complain, we have cause to complain about a great many things, certainly. And I'm certainly not a complacency man, as the loyal audience knows. But she did say, we'll look back at times like now and think, remember the good old days. And I just thought that was an incredible thing to say, that sometimes we have to remind ourselves that we are living in the good times right now. And we've got to make hay while the sun is still shining. And this coronavirus thing, this pandemic thing, it is a reminder of just how fragile all that can be. The Dow, I'm going to hit the refresh button here in front of me right now, the Dow down 1,007 this morning. And of course, this is on the back of the fact that it's not just Wuhan, China, it's not just Chinese people. It's not just a person-to-person contact now that is causing the coronavirus to spread, and it's causing a lot of market consternation. It's causing a lot of earnings reports to be revised down, and for companies to come out and say, well, you know what, we don't know. I mean, Best Buy comes out yesterday, and they said, this is only going to be a short-term thing. We don't expect us to really have this. Situation going on for a long time. And I think that was probably the most responsible thing to do because we don't know, and we'll talk about this more with Stephen K. Bannon. We talk about it more on War and Pandemic in just a moment, but we don't know just how far away, realistically speaking, a vaccine is. There are a lot of people out there right now saying, okay, we're on the cusp of it. We're ready for the human trials, but we don't know how long that's actually going to take, if they're going to work, if they have to go back and revise it, etc., etc. So the markets are responding to all of that. And it just underscores that point that this election coming up right now, I mean, this is almost a wartime election rather than an incumbent who's trying to fight off a billionaire oligarch who's trying to buy it. You have all those factors and this coronavirus, which will almost undoubtedly take us right up to the election point in November. So we have an extraordinary situation on our hands, and we're going to talk about it more with Steve and Jason. And Jason, wrote me a little note about this morning in our show clock, and it was really poignant. So I'm excited for him to come and join us here and discuss what he wrote. I would say it, but I don't want to take credit for it, and I want him to elaborate on it. He's at the Hill offices right now doing the Hill TV. He's been a great media performer for us over the last couple of days. Really in demand, Jason Miller. This is War Room 2020. I'm Raheem Kassam. We'll be right back with your tweets and comments in just a moment.
War Room 2020. Bannon, Miller, Kassam.
Right, welcome back to War Room 2020. I'm Raheem Kassam. Joined by Jason Miller in just a moment. Stephen K. Bannon hopefully will be joining us on the line momentarily. He is rolling meetings in New York City about this coronavirus. And somebody noticed on Twitter at the hashtag #WarRoom2020 said, "Show Raheem some love. He's all alone today." And that's not entirely true. I mean, it's kind of true. I got producer Vish in the room going, "Hey, what about me?" I'm sure what Grits is talking about is on air alone. And the reason is because obviously, look, and we'll let you into, how the sausage is made on this show. We pulled together, obviously, War Room Impeachment with 24 hours to go. We pulled together the pandemic show within 24 hours when this became clear to us that this was going to be a major global incident about a month and a bit ago. And also, we are... in this room, in this office, in this war room, we are a small but feisty staff. We work very hard indeed. And as this thing manifests further, as the impeachment manifested further, as the campaign stuff manifests further, and of course the pandemic stuff, we get pulled in all sorts of directions. People want, obviously, Stephen K. Bannon's expertise on this, especially up there in New York with all the activity in the markets. The political shows want Jason on, undoubtedly, and nobody wants me, so I end up here hosting the show. But this is what happens when you have a thinly spread base in terms of the talent and the people out there who do this stuff on a day-to-day basis. You have a country of 400 million people out there, and this is why citizens like you are so important. It's so important that you jump in to all of this stuff as well, rather than, broader shoulders, and we'll have more victories. And that was one of the things we were talking about at the populist nationalist dinner that we hosted the other night, is how do we get more people not just voting in our directions, but actually becoming involved, running for office, taking up strategic positions in all this stuff. When the Trump administration first came in, they had so many thousands of jobs to fill, and we just didn't have the bench, the depth in the bench for it, which is why we ended up with so many of these holdovers and so on and so forth. So just a little bit of insider stuff there I was reminded of by the tweet from Grits this morning. I want to get into something here about... We were talking in the first segment, and we're going to be joined by Jason Miller in just a sec. We were talking in the first segment about the coronavirus, about where the markets are, and about the knock-on effect of the election. And I think it's very easy to forget, amongst all that's on the televisions behind me and everything that we're hearing all day long, it's easy to forget we have a primary tomorrow in South Carolina, right? We have Joe Biden being stomped on by the coronavirus in the news, and now he's gone up in the polls since that debate performance and the endorsement that he got recently. Big endorsement down there in South Carolina. He's gone up in the polls. He's gone up on the predictive markets. It looks like he'll take South Carolina. I do think that means that he gets more in terms of fundraising, more in terms of activists, so on and so forth. But nobody's talking about it because of all the virus news, etc., etc. It's imperative that we do talk about it. Jason Miller is in the house. We'll let him get situated and bring him in on this as well. Jason, we're just talking to the audience about how Joe Biden's getting stepped on by coronavirus. People forget there's a primary tomorrow. And
there is a primary tomorrow. Although, did you see Sleepy Joe on CNN this morning?
I did not.
So he looked super, super duper sleepy, and it wasn't really the right look. But to CNN's credit, even though it was a total fluff fest, and I mean, there's just the nicest, Joe Biden, we just want you to do so well. They asked him about the Nelson Mandela arrest comments, and Joe Biden admitted, well, I was actually what was his language? It was like my progress was inhibited, or I was, temporarily detained. He basically admitted that he was not arrested and the whole thing was made up.
Wow. That was a big, massive lie that he got caught in, and he's now admitted it was. I mean, what was he saying? He tripped over his words multiple times?
Well, no, I mean, he lied. But look, this probably doesn't do anything to slow his momentum for tomorrow. No. Joe Biden's going to win. The question that then this becomes is, look, given what's going on in the world with coronavirus, given the fact that Michael Bloomberg is unacceptable to the Democratic base, both because of stop and frisk issues, because of the NDA and Me Too type issues, and because he's just 4 feet tall and he's uninspiring, he doesn't connect with any of the Democratic base. I
was talking this morning just about on that point, just before we conclude, is that everyone's voice was playing on the radio this morning, all the candidates, and then it came to Bloomberg, and I literally had to, who's that? I didn't recognize the voice, and he's just got no sort of recognizability about him. When he speaks, it's so meek and so small.
And I think there's a point here that, and look, I think Joe Biden is dead man walking, but Bernie Sanders is going to go into convention without having a majority. He'll have a plurality of the Democratic delegates, but not a majority to go and do it. There is a chance that Joe Biden could be the consensus candidate that they rally around to steal this from Bernie Sanders. One of the main points to keep in mind with this convergence of the coronavirus and how this frames things for the fall, this is the reason why we talk about this so much. How we currently are viewing the November 2020 elections could be different than what they're actually decided on. Remember, in 2008, it was going to be the foreign policy election, then became the economy when it crashed at the end. We had talked about this being the economy election. It could be this fall could be determined on who best is going to keep you safe. And so when you look at a Donald Trump versus a Bernie Sanders, people see Bernie Sanders as being crazy, as being kind of a kook. He doesn't have that presence to do it. Obviously, the Trump administration needs to make sure that they do their job and keep us safe as this thing moves along. But this is why people could coalesce around a Joe Biden to steal it at convention, because they could say, hey, he might be terrible on the campaign trail. He's sleepy, he stumbles, he makes up things like he got arrested going to visit Nelson Mandela. But in the face of a crisis like the coronavirus, he's a lot better than Bernie Sanders.
We were talking about it in the first segment. Unfortunately, we didn't have Stephen K. Bannon join us yet. We're hoping he can join us later on in the show. So I was just kind of monologuing on all the things that we've seen, the developments this morning, the markets, so on and so forth. And one of the things is that came out this morning is Mick Mulvaney was speaking, and I didn't really like what he had to say, if I'm honest with you. I didn't really think, and I want you to maybe provide some context for his comments, but Mulvaney saying, the media is hyping up the pandemic and the coronavirus to take down Trump. He's saying that he said, are you going to see some schools shut down? Probably. Maybe you'll see some impacts on public transportation, but we know how to handle this. And he said, what I might do to calm the markets is turn the television off for 24 hours. I don't think that's not particularly helpful messaging, is it?
No, I think he probably need to run that by the vice president's office, since Vice President Pence is now in charge of messaging before he says something like that. I mean, two things.
I'm not trying to be a hater, by the way.
It's just unforced error. I mean, look, we have some very serious players, from Vice President Pence to Ambassador Deborah Birx, who are Secretary Azar, who are diving into this thing and making it their sole focus in life, working around the clock in their staffs, and they're taking action. And I would point out, by the way, that this isn't just like a U.S. being caught flat-footed type issue, or what's the U.S. preparedness. The entire world was caught flat-footed here. I mean, it's not like we can just call up and say, hey, Canada, why don't you go and send us your test kits? Or, hey, Switzerland, why don't you go and send us all your, hazmat gear? I mean, these are things that nobody was prepared for at this level. But I would say that with regard to the comments this morning, look, he's accurate that many of the media are trying to use this as a political bludgeon against President Trump. He's also accurate that, like Japan, there could be things like we saw in Italy, the soccer match, soccer, not football, soccer match with no fans in the stands. We could see some of that here in the United States. At the same time, I don't think that's Nicole is supposed to do that at CPAC. That needs to come through the official channels of the Vice President's office.
Okay, we're going to be back in just a second. Who are we joined by, Jason?
So we have former Congressman Jason Lewis from Minnesota. Ken Smith from the Senate seat in Minnesota is back in play in 2020.
We'll be back in just a moment.
War Room 2020 with Stephen K. Bannon, Jason Miller, and Raheem Kassam. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back. Friday, February 28th, 2020. This is War Room 2020. Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam. Stephen K. Bannon joining us on the line now. Steve.
Hey, how you doing, guys? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you loud and clear, Steve. Give it to us. Yeah. What's happening this morning?
Well, on pandemic, we're up here on Wall Street, and we've had for the last couple of days, a number of the top traders and the top financial experts, but everybody's at their desk today. We're actually going to do something quite historic. It's the fastest trade-off, I think, in the history of the New York Stock Exchange, every financial capital market throughout the world. is in turmoil, from the bond markets to the currency markets to the Nikkei, London Stock Exchange, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and of course everything here in New York. So it's going to be quite crazy today. But we've got a great show to really talk about the economic and financial contagion that is coming off of the coronavirus. So I do think, and I'm glad that Jason's back. I do think the president, one of the things that from the command presence he had the other night, and the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, is to. I think the most common thing you do is probably not. I would strongly recommend not to do the rally in South Carolina tonight. I would actually recommend to go to the CDC, to actually go to Atlanta, get a more detailed briefing, and really work around the clock over the weekend with Mike Pence, the vice president of the team, to get our arms around this.
Yeah, Steve, there have been a number of things. This has really become, as we talked about 5 weeks ago when we started the War Room pandemic, which follows right after War Room 2020 here. We talked about President Trump being the wartime president. We talked about this convergence of the economy, of the foreign threat, of the invasion, but not in the way that we've previously talked about it with countries, but now with this virus, and the way it's impacting everything from the financial markets to public safety. This has also become quite a political weapon over the last 24 to 48 hours. We see Schumer and Pelosi with their attacks. We see Mini Mike Bloomberg up on TV with an attack ad on this. Steve, how do you see this further becoming a political football as we head into November?
So this is why I think it's good for the president. I think what the president said the other day at the podium about Nancy Pelosi, when she attacked him, said, quote, "The president does not know what he's talking about," unquote. The president came back right away and said, "Hey, now's the time not for partisan attacks." And of course, the president's the best in the world at partisan attacks. He says, now's the time to bring the country together. Yesterday on the show, Jack Maxey, who runs the pandemic war room, did a very good kind of walkthrough of all the details of the partisan attacks, and the president trying to be magnanimous. I think it's obviously important for the country to come together in this. It's the only way we're going to beat this virus. That's why you said, Jason, on the very first day of this pandemic show, he's now a wartime president. And I think this is very important. And I just think the president should continue to ask for people's support. And that's why I think the things like the rally tonight, to me, is a little too partisan. I think it's the time for it to go to CDC and actually show, step into the shoes that he is a wartime president. He's going to handle this. His command presence the other night, we have nothing to fear here but fear itself. The United States can get through this. We just need more facts. We got to get more test kits out. We need a little more focus on who we're letting in the country, on what planes, and just to get back to the basics. And I think Kevin Warsh this morning on CNBC, who was President Trump's cover bid on being head of the Federal Reserve, was terrific. He had a very calming presence, really walked through what was going on. It was quite powerful, and I think we just need more of that from the administration right now.
And Steve, before we lose you, as a reminder, we have former Congressman Jason Lewis here in studio from Minnesota, who's running for the U.S. Senate, going to get that seat back from Tina Smith. But I want to get your sense, Steve, on what the market reaction, what people in New York are telling you about Vice President Pence stepping up into this role, Ambassador Deborah Birx, who's now being brought over to essentially be the chief of staff handling these types of operations. What are people saying about it? What's the feedback you're getting?
Well, the feedback, look, I think they feel Pence, and particularly Birx and others, is a good team. The beginning's a good team. I think they like to see a little more detail out about what the actions are. But look, it's another big meltdown today. Nikkei, I think, was down 4 or 5% last night. The market opened down 500 points a day, got over 1,000 points. I haven't checked here in the last few minutes, but it is, and it's every market throughout the world. It's whether it's the bond market, the currency market, or the stock market. The one thing people should understand is that the flight to safety in the most stable economy in the world is going to be the United States. I just think we need to reiterate that over and over and over again. This is the island of stability. Yeah. Also, it's the United States leadership, since clearly China is going in the opposite direction, becoming more secretive. It's our leadership will see us through.
We're up against a hard break here. Stephen K. Bannon from New York. Thanks for joining us here at War Room 2020. You'll be back in the next hour for more War Room Pandemic. Be back in just a moment.
War Room 2020. Bannon, Miller, Kassan.
Welcome back to War Room 2020, Friday, February 28th, the year of our Lord 2020. I'm Raheem Kassam, joined now by the two Jasons. We've got Jason Miller in the house, hot off the hill TV. Jason, we're going to have to throw that up on warroom.org so people can see the business you're doing this morning for us, representing. And Jason Lewis in the house, former congressman and now candidate for Minnesota Senate. Before we get started, I got one question for you, Jason. And Jason. Crooked is running a podcast.
Yes.
Does that mean she's out?
Oh, I think she's getting ready to come back in. So I want to get, I'm putting you on the spot, Congressman. What do you think Crooked should name her podcast?
Short-lived, I think, would probably be the best one.
I'm going to go with The Broomstick.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, I see. I'd just go with Crooked. Own the brand.
Yeah, but there's already Crooked Media, like the Pod Save
She
America.
should buy
guy.
it then. Get one of her buddies to buy Crooked Media, turn that into her channel.
She should have trademarked it, by the way.
Yeah, right.
She should have
She
trademarked.
just owned the Crooked.
That's funny.
All right, I want to get into this. What are we looking at here? In this
Congressman Jason Lewis, thank you very much for joining us. You're running for Senate this year against Tina Smith, who was appointed that spot after Al Franken that had to vacate his seat there. There is a.
I'm doing what he did.
No. That's
Megan, stop.
No, yeah,
Right. That was the other Jason.
Yeah, that's Raheem was just for anyone who's watching America'sVoice.news. You saw some interesting interaction.
I just
there.
me too, Jason. Miller.
Congressman Jason Lewis running for U.S. Senate. Everyone here I talk to in town, so this is one of our best. This is probably our single best pickup opportunity. But they say to me the following: give him money, but don't make too much noise about the race because we want to sneak up on the Democrats. Give us the lay of the land of what's going on in the Senate race and how it's coming together.
Well, it's not a sleeper in Minnesota. I mean, Tina Smith is the accidental senator. She was chief of staff for Mayor Rybeck. He's a new urbanist, sort of big regional government, mass transit. Everybody lives in a Soviet-style condo next to a transit line mayor. She was his chief of staff. Then she went to Mark Dayton. Remember Mark Dayton when he was a senator out here and said, everybody under the desk, nobody move. Remember? He came back and, believe it or not, was a two-term governor, very liberal, rescinded all the plenty tax cuts and all of that. She was his chief and then appointed lieutenant governor and then appointed to replace Franken. So she truly is the accidental senator, but she's governing like Ilhan Omar. And so in Minnesota, I've been basically, since I announced the state fair, been traveling the state and up on the Iron Range where they've been told by Democrats, learn to code. We may have the largest reserves of copper and nickel on the Iron Range. So it's famous for taconite, but those supplies are dwindling. 25% of the jobs since 2000, logging and mining, are down. But now they discovered copper and nickel. And there's a couple of mines, Twin Metals and Polymet, they want to get at, obviously, to supply lithium batteries and Green New Deals and all that stuff. You'd think the left would be all over this. Nope, no mining, learn to code. And that's where the Democrat policy is up there. So all of those trade union folks, those former DFLers, the Democrats are losing the labor part of the DFL in Minnesota. They're coming to our side. I spent 5 weeks on the range and met with the United Steelworkers, met with the folks running the mines, and they are ready to flip that 8th district, which used to be James Oberstar's little fiefdom. Look, one of the singular strengths of President Trump is he's brought the working man and woman back to the Republican Party.
And Congressman,
we're seeing that in Minnesota.
I want to stay on this point for a moment because we're talking about how the state is changing, how the upper Midwest is changing, particularly the northeastern part of Minnesota. It's not just the congressional district, but it's the entire state as a whole. This is a state that obviously has been solid blue for a long time, but now you're putting it in play. President Trump is putting it in play. Don Jr. did an event for you in D.C. last night. You have just a lot of support for your campaign. Talk to us about the changing dynamics of Minnesota as a state.
Yeah, well, it's a microcosm for the rest of the country. Has the Ilhan Omar and Betty McCollum dropped a bill banning basically mining these two mines, or at least one of them. As they push darker and darker blue, the rest of the state goes red, very much like the rest of the country. So we're seeing McCain go in there, loses by 300,000 votes in 2008. Romney follows that up in 2012 by 225,000 votes. President Trump comes in, loses by 44,000 votes with one person on the ground. And that person was moved to Colorado in October. So you're seeing a shift. I was the last guy standing in a blue term or a midterm blue wave, right? I was the last guy standing because I stuck with President Trump. And so that's the sort of thing that's resonating in Minnesota. And everybody talks about in all these metro areas, well, you got to appeal to certain suburbs and you got to keep the metro area. And you do have to keep it somewhat. But look, in Greater Minnesota, Romney won by 56,000. The president won Greater Minnesota by 299,000. So are you going to lose two counties, Hennepin and Ramsey, the urban counties in the metro area? Probably. But we'll take the other 85 counties. Exactly the way things went in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and Minnesota's next.
So, Congressman, and by the way, Congressman Lewis's website is Lewis for MN, so LEWISFORMN. Encourage everyone to go visit the website, help out however they can.
And donate, because that's, it truly is the swamp. I worked with a number of folks, and when I was in the 115th, and we had the greatest, most productive session in a generation in the first 2 years of the Trump administration. And yet some of the folks I talked to downtown say, well, we really don't go into challenger races, So all these incumbents, the swamp, could just dial their Rolodex. And so we need the resources. So go to lewis4mn.com and help, because this is the one to flip in Minnesota.
Congressman, as you look at the Senate, who do you think will be your day one allies? Who are the folks that you're going to saddle up to at in the lunchroom and say, I'm ready to go to battle with you?
Well, it might surprise you, but Kevin Kramer, the freshman senator from North Dakota, has been a great friend. He indeed served with me in the 115th. But he's the one, sort of my mentor right now, saying, what's it like between the two chambers? What can you accomplish? What you can't? The thing about politics is, and the difference between being a pundit and a politician is, you have to prioritize. You have to say, these are the things I want to accomplish, because there are 434 other members in the House and another 99 in the Senate who thinks things ought to be done just their way. And so if you think you're going to do everything your way, you're going to have a problem. So we prioritized in the 115th to get tax reform done. We prioritized to get career and technical education done. My juvenile justice bill, which was signed by the president, we got that done. Energy independence. I mean, Jimmy Carter can take off his cardigan sweater now and turn up the thermostat, because we're energy independent. All of those things were a matter of prioritization. Had it not been for one vote in the Senate, we would have got health care done.
So, Congressman, we have Raheem. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you were a radio host once, right?
I was. Yeah.
In case you couldn't tell, this guy's smooth.
It really shows. That was crisp.
No, it's very smooth. So we got to ask you, and I want to tee this up before
Sure.
we go to the break here. So when we talk about Minnesota, we talk about politics. Ilhan Omar.
Yeah, the gift that keeps on giving.
Exactly. What is going on there?
Now her latest diatribe about Mike Pence was he didn't handle HIV right in Indiana, so therefore, look, these folks weaponized our healthcare reform bill, and now they're weaponizing worldwide health crisis. I mean, this is really kind of amazing how low they will go.
We got a break here, but we'll talk about that more when we come back. She's just mad that he didn't marry his sister. Okay, this is what's going on here. War Room 2020. We'll be right back after this break.
War Room 2020. Bannon, Miller, Kassan.
Welcome back, War Room 2020. 248 days and a wake up to the election, Jason.
Yes, and we are here with Congressman Jason Lewis.
I didn't mean you.
Running for U.S. Senate in Minnesota. A seat we desperately need to get back. His website, Lewis for MN, LEWISFORMN.com. Go and check it out. Get on board. Congressman, the coronavirus is everything. This is what's dominating all the news right now. Talk to us about how folks in Minnesota are thinking about this, how the information flow is working, and what having been here on Capitol Hill, your understanding of what's going on and how we ought to be looking at this.
Well, Minnesota, the last couple of days here in Washington, it's been kind of crisp. You know what we call this in Minnesota? A warming trend. That is the epicenter of the cold and flu season. And that comes through every winter, and you can be rest assured when you've got kids in school in October, you're going to get the cold, and some people are going to get the flu in Minnesota because all the windows come up and all the germs stay in. So we're sort of used to this wintertime sickness, and I think sort of subconsciously, from what I've seen, it hasn't hit that panic stage in the upper Midwest yet. Now, it may, given what the markets are doing, and as Steve was saying, you can't even, the flight to bonds is even coming under some assault now. Usually, how low can the yield go? And that's kind of scary to everybody. So that may wake people up. But as a matter of a health crisis, I'm not seeing that sort of panic on the ground. And what we are seeing, however, with a quote-unquote pandemic wartime president, is politics not stopping at the water's edge here. You're seeing the Democrats, they've weaponized our health care reform bill, they weaponized impeachment. Now they're weaponizing a worldwide health crisis. It's almost like the Dow. How low can it go, right? How low can they go? It's really beyond comprehension. So I think the president's doing everything right. When I was in the 115th, we raised the funds for NIH. They actually had a budget increase. So everything the other side has been talking about has been false. Quite frankly, the president's America First policy of controlling who gets in and who doesn't in this country is going to come to fruition, I think. So frankly, I think he's doing everything just about right, and the assault on Mike Pence is just totally unwarranted. So they just need to keep buckling down. I think this we will fix it. We are that island in the storm, as Steve was talking about. We'll get this through, and then who knows? We may look back, hopefully, and this will all be a big buying opportunity on Wall Street.
Congressman, I think when we talk about value propositions as candidates, obviously you're a very gifted communicator. You've had a career in radio. You're someone President Trump definitely could use here in Washington, helping to defend him, fight for things like Supreme Court judges. You're also a problem solver. Talk to us about your meeting with Senator Mike Braun in the last minute and what you want to do on health care.
We've got about 30 seconds.
Well, Mike and I talked about the Republicans cannot afford to cede this issue. We've got a growing economy, but the last albatross is for small businessmen and women and their health care costs, and individuals on an individual market like Mincher, which is a total debacle. I've been on the DC link, I've been on the Minnesota Mincher, and my premiums have quadrupled, deductibles have doubled, copays have doubled. This is not a success story. Even the Democrats know it. That's why they're going for single payer. We should own this issue, and that's what I want to work with Senator Braun and all the other senators next year.
Excellent. Again, Congressman Jason Lewis, his website, lewisformn.com, running against Tina Smith in that Senate seat in Minnesota. We have to get this seat back. Go to the website, get active.
She was a former executive in Planned Parenthood, too, and very radical on the life issue.
All right, get on to War Room 2020, hashtag War Room 2020. We have the question, what should crooked Hillary Clinton call her new podcast? I like the one, Chronicles of the Crooked and Corrupt. War Room Pandemic is up next with Stephen K. Bannon, live from New York City. Thanks to Jason. And Jason, be right back.